Let's talk.
Excellent.
3, 2, 1, talk.
3, 2, 1, book launch.
Oh my God.
Hi, folks. Welcome. If you're joining us for the launch of Rebecca Handler's novel, Edie Richter is Not Alone. You are in the right place. We're joined here tonight by the author herself, Rebecca Handler, as well as Caroline Paul. Thanks for joining us. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes. So while I'm talking and doing businessy things, you can go ahead, get comfy, take your seats, get yourself a cocktail or a cup of tea. It's raining here in San Francisco, so it's kind of perfect for either of those things. And while we don't have a chat this evening, we do have a Q&A portion. So while I'm talking, why don't you go ahead and just enter where you're joining us from this evening. I'm sure Rebecca would love to know later, and I'll be sure to show her. So we love to know where people are calling in from. But in the meantime, I'd like to say hello. Hi, my name is Car. I'm a bookseller at Green Apple Books here in San Francisco. And before we get started, I'm also going to go ahead and tell you about a couple of events that we have coming up here for our store. Tomorrow, Wednesday, March 10th at 6 p.m. Pacific time, right here, right now. We'll be joined by debut author Sam Cohen when she discusses her book, Sarah Land. I'm terribly excited about this book as well. Cohen will be in conversation with Andrea Lawler, who calls Sarah Land, quote, queer, dirty, insightful, and so funny. Lawler's the author of Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl, which is a favorite of mine, and I'm really excited that Sam and Andrea will be in conversation. So that's tomorrow, Wednesday, March 10th at 6 p.m. And then on Thursday, March 11th at 7 p.m., we're doing it a little later in the evening, we'll be hosting some of the Bay Area's finest poets to celebrate Alan Cesaro's collection, Pinata Theory. This lineup will include Cesaro himself, along with Reina J. Leone and Barbara Jane Reyes, and the new San Francisco Poet Laureate, Tongo Ison Martin. Alan brought these people together because they're poets that have inspired him over the years and been kind of mentors to him. So it's a really special night, and we are, reaping the benefits of all these great people being together. So that's Thursday, March 11th at 7 p.m. We have a full calendar of our events on our website, and all of our events are free unless stated otherwise. If you've joined us before, this is ordinarily where I transition into saying, that being said, please do buy books. I'm happy to report that most of the people joining us this evening, thank you so much for pre-ordering Rebecca's book. It means a lot, not just to us as an independent bookstore, but it means a lot to Rebecca. If you don't understand how much of an impact your pre-order has on, especially a debut author's book, pre-orders are incredibly helpful to authors. It shows the publisher that they made a good investment in publishing this book. So thank you for that. And a note, if you haven't received your copy of Rebecca's book yet, I will say it's not a very fun reason, but I will say because of extreme weather circumstances and shipping, etc., the books are a little bit delayed, but we will have them shipped out by the end of the week. If you ordered a signed or personalized copy, they will be signed or personalized for you as promised. And guess what? The book is still going to be good when it arrives in your hands. So that's good news. I do want to mention that this evening we have a Q&A portion at the end. If you've already been writing where you're from right now, you know that the Q&A is either on the top of your screen or on the bottom of your screen, depending on your interface. But as questions come to you throughout the hour, please do write them in as they come in, and Caroline is going to be very graciously reading them as well. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our authors for the evening. We're joined here by Caroline Paul, who is the author of the books Fighting Fire, East Wind Rain, Lost Cat, The Gutsy Girl, and You Are Mighty. She's a longtime member of the San Francisco Writers Grotto, and you can even catch her TED Talk on Raising Brave Girls. Please do welcome Caroline Paul. Yay. And we also have Rebecca Handler, who is a writer who lives and works in San Francisco. Rebecca's stories have been published and awarded in several anthologies, including Best Flash Fiction Award in the 2017 Words of Wyndham anthology, and as part of the collection A Nice Boy. You can find her writing on her website, One Woman Party, which features her flash fiction and nonfiction essays. Her debut novel, Edie Richter is Not Alone, is the reason that we are here this evening. So please join me in welcoming Rebecca Handler. Take it away, folks.
At this point, there'd be just incredible outpouring of applause for Rebecca. I know.
I see.
I can hear them.
People are here. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Everybody clap for Rebecca because a debut. This is the debut of her debut.
Yes.
And I'm Caroline, and I'm just thrilled to be interviewing Rebecca today. We've known each other for about 7 years or so. And a couple of years ago, you told me you were publishing a book. And so I have gotten to sit on the sidelines and watch as this book has run the gauntlet that all books do: agents, publishing, marketing, and then now here we are. So amazing.
It's amazing. I was actually thinking about a specific time when we were walking, I think, one of my foster dogs together. And I was like running something by you as a possible change in the book. And you were incredibly supportive about it. And that was probably like 2 years ago or something, a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. Such a long process. But yes, you have been extremely supportive. So thank you.
Good. Well, I'm honored to be here today. Did you do anything to celebrate today?
Well, I went for a swim this morning. I've been doing a lot of swimming in the bay, particularly during a pandemic, because the ocean and the bay are never closed. So I went this morning with my brother, who's here. Hi. And we had a really great swim. And then, no, I worked. I went to work, which was actually really good. It felt like sort of a normal day. I did treat myself to sushi today.
Good.
So I had a really good sushi lunch. And then I've just been overwhelmed by the messages I've been getting from people, like personal messages and on social media and email, and it's just lovely. So,
well, I know we're
love today for sure.
We have people here from Australia,
I know,
all the end of the world, and then San Francisco. So, welcome, mateys. Is that how you say it? Yeah. So, what's that?
I said good enough.
Okay, good enough. Yeah.
They're all rolling their eyes right now.
I know. These Americans.
It's so hard to do an Aussie accent well.
Yeah, I won't try. So the book came out today, and a lot of people haven't read it yet. So I was hoping you would just give us a quick synopsis before we begin to talk about it.
Sure. So Edie Richter is Not Alone. Conveniently have it right here. Is a book about a woman who is grieving after the death of her father. And she and her husband moved from San Francisco to Perth, Australia, thinking that maybe the remote location will help. And of course it does not, because this is a novel and things need to happen. It does not help at all. Edie is actually harboring a pretty dark secret, and that is really tearing her up inside. So I would say the book is about secret keeping, grief, aftermath, and the sort of path to discovering that you're never completely alone.
But it's a very funny book, I want to say.
Yeah, I mean, there's some funny parts.
No, a lot of funny parts. So what made you write this particular book? I mean, I think sometimes writers start with a question or a character or a circumstance in their own life. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in the book, Edie's father is diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. In my own life, my father had Alzheimer's and died of Alzheimer's in 2013. I wasn't writing, I was writing professionally then, but I hadn't started writing fiction at all then. But I've been paying very close attention, I think, my whole life to things. And I paid really close attention, especially in the last few years of his life. Started taking notes. I didn't even really know why I was taking notes, but it was like I wanted to really remember things about him and also the deterioration of him. After he died, I had this spark of a story idea. I don't want to give too much away in the book, so I'm not going to say too much about it. but the circumstances under which my father died were sort of normal, what you can say about Alzheimer's, a sort of normal slow decline. And in Edie's situation, the circumstances are different. And so I had this spark of, it was sort of like a sliding door moment of like, what if? So what if something else had happened? And what would the aftermath of that decision would be like? And so that was like this, I think the seed was planted then. And then flash forward to when I started writing the blog, which onewomanparty.com.
Amazing blog.
Thank you.
I'm not a blog reader, but this blog is great and hilarious again.
Thank you.
But also poignant. Like, yeah.
Thanks. I started writing that when I moved myself with my husband and children. We moved to Perth, Australia, soon after the death of my own father. And I started writing a blog there. And one thing led to another. And then I started writing short stories and fiction and flash fiction. And I always had that spark of the Edie story in me. And I think once I kind of opened the door to fiction, I started writing about Edie and the character developed. And she's sort of, I think this is common for a lot of debut novels, is the protagonist is almost like a warped fantasy version of the author in some way. She's pretty much nothing like me,
No.
But there's elements of Edie that I fantasize about being, in the way that she is not particularly concerned with what people think of her or what she says. She makes decisions very hastily, and whereas I can like hem and haw a little more. And so everything came together, and I thought it was going to be a short story, and then it just kept going and going and going. And I remember the moment when I was like, I think I'm going to write a book. Like, I think this story is actually long enough to turn into a novel. So I guess that's how it happened.
So, but you could have, if you read your blog and you read Edie Richter is Not Alone, you can see that there are parallels, and it makes one wonder, like, why did you actually pick fiction? Because you could have very well have picked memoir.
Yeah, I was so, like, I would say probably 80% of my blog is nonfiction and just sort of like observational essays, and I use a lot of humor, of course. And then I hit a wall in my blog in the way that I wasn't willing to push down all of my boundaries and talk about everything. I don't know enough about memoir writing, but I imagine you do have to choose what to write about and what not to write about. In the memoirs that I have read and enjoyed, I've noticed that, the more, it's like I want more and more. I want everything from the author, and I don't feel comfortable in that realm. And I feel very protective of my loved ones, and always want to be the butt of the joke, which I think is a little hard maybe in a memoir. In fiction, however, you can really write about anything you want and explore themes that, like, by creating characters and places, and just push boundaries in fiction in a way that I find very comforting and cathartic.
So I want to go back a little bit to just your choice to write about Alzheimer's, because I think people might pick up the book and miss the fact that it's not really about Alzheimer's. It's about, well, you'll talk about more what it's about, but Alzheimer's is a catalyst, but nevertheless, it's very important. You talk a lot about memory in this book. So what were the decisions you had to make to write about Alzheimer's in a way that we would get it? And I want to note just quickly, there was this moment where Edie is spoon feeding her father, and she realizes that her father has forgot how to take the spoon in her mouth. And for someone like me who doesn't have an experience with Alzheimer's, you so perfectly encapsulated the wreckage of Alzheimer's right there. In a way that was just lovely and poignant, but also not, I wanted to keep reading.
Well, thank you. Yes, I mean, I imagine there's a lot of people here tonight who have experienced something like this, some sort of degenerative disease in their family. And watching someone being taken away from you very slowly does not leave you. And I don't think that's just for mental diseases. I think that's also for physical diseases. I had a friend actually, so my father died of Alzheimer's, and then a few years later, a very close friend of our family who is named Beata, she's mentioned in my acknowledgements. She was kind of my grandmother role when I was growing up. I flew back from Perth to spend time with Beata because she was also dying and had pretty severe dementia at the end of her life. And at that point, I was already writing this novel. And I was taking a lot of notes with Beata as well, and just watching sort of day by day what's being pulled away. Now, in terms of like why Alzheimer's and why not something else, I mean, I have spent some time we've all had a lot of time to think in the past year. And many of us, particularly those of us here tonight in the US, have had the experience of things being pulled away from us, one thing at a time, and have really felt isolated this year. So I actually think that this book could resonate with people in a way because we've all experienced some loss, and we've all had a lot of change this year. And I'm sure if we look at look at ourselves from the beginning of the pandemic to now, we'll see that we've changed in some ways, big or small. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just wonder if you could go in this book and switch Alzheimer's for a pandemic or something.
I have to say that I think I could relate, but I think Alzheimer's was so important to the structure of this book. And let me ask you if this was conscious, because I want you to know that many writers groaned inwardly when you said you'd only been writing for about 5 years, and yet you produced this amazingly, beautifully written book. So we're all going, oh God, a talented writer. Anyway, I know you work hard too, but the structure of the book was amazing. So you go back and forth it has a propulsive plot. So you're in the present, but she's often thinking about the past. Mm-hmm. It seems to speak of memory a lot. Can you talk about why you did you even decide that structure, or was it something that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought a lot about the structure of this book, and actually it went through several iterations. The way I wrote it was, I treated each chapter as its own little mini story. And I knew the only way I would be able to write a book is if I just took, like the famous bird by bird analogy that Anne Lamott uses. It's like I could only do, should I clarify that maybe?
Yeah, I don't even remember. I've read the book.
Because I saw your eyebrows go like, what?
Yeah, that was my...
So the writer Anne Lamott has a beautiful book called Bird by Bird. And that is a reference to a story of when she was growing up. She remembers this incident where her brother had this school project that he was terrified about and had a very limited amount of time. And the project was he had to describe, like, I'm making this part up, 50 birds or something, let's say. And he had to go through it. And his father just came over to Anne Lamott's brother and put his hand on his shoulder and said, we're just going to take it bird by bird. One bird at a time. And so that's a book recommendation for everyone. It's a wonderful book about writing and really about living. And so the only way that I knew I was going to be able to write this book was bird by bird. And so I wrote small chapters. I collected them all. And then I experimented with different placement of them. So there was one iteration of the book where it was all sequential. There were no flashbacks. And I decided that wasn't working for the story and also wasn't working for the theme of Alzheimer's. because when you're talking to someone with Alzheimer's, they're sort of all over the place generally. And I wanted the structure of the book to reflect that. That was really important to me. And the beginning of the book and the end of the book take place in the present tense. The rest of the book takes place in the past tense, but they're, oh, hi.
She just jumped on my lap. I'm so sorry. I was trying to pretend nothing was happening.
I locked my cat out of the room. Hi. Oh, there's a cat featured in my book too.
I know.
You just did that for the cat tie-in, didn't you?
No, but please proceed. We'll ignore this cat.
So, I'm happy to always see an animal. And yeah, so I just kind of experimented with the structure, and I moved chapters around until they made sense to me. And it was important to me to create a book that was very gentle to the reader, and a reader can read just 1 or 2 pages before bed, as I sometimes tend to do, and get something from it.
Yeah.
I think we were talking about this the other day, is like, I sometimes feel like more like a sculptor when I write, in that I like produce a lot and then really just carve it and shave it off. So there's a lot of chapters that didn't end up in the final book because I just kept tossing them. It was like, no, I want every sentence, every word to matter. And I just don't want to waste people's time, frankly. I like a concise read myself.
Well, it's a fast moving, concise read, which I also appreciate. I want to ask you another question. So in the first chapter of the book is in the second person form, which is the you form. And then the rest of the book is in the I form. Can you talk a little bit about that first chapter? Why you decided to do that?
Yes. I don't know. I think it's because I'm scared of second person. I find that to be kind of the scariest place to write, in second person. And so I just decided to go for it. I think that I've read a few books that all take place in second person. It's pretty risky. I think they can work sometimes and they cannot work other times. It can feel, I think, to some readers very accusatory to constantly see the word you over and over and over. But it can also feel really inclusive in short bits. So what I'm hoping is that both at the beginning and at the end, you do feel like, oh, this could be me. This could be me doing this. This could be me feeling this. A huge part of the book is about the fact that Edie's carrying this really troubling secret that she's told no one. And it's like almost literally bursting out of her. And I think that a lot of us understand that feeling of keeping something so deep inside of us that it's hurting us. And I wanted the reader to be able to resonate with that. So hopefully the second person is used well in my book, and people will be able to relate to it.
Oh yeah, I loved it. I mean, I think I got very early this was going to be an anatomy of a breakdown, which I think it really was. So you take Edie to Perth, and you yourself went to Perth, which is described in the book as being the end of the world, the beginning of the universe. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about being in Perth and being an expat in particular, and how that affects your creativity. And could this book have been written if you had been gone instead to like London or Ohio even?
Ooh, Ohio. A year abroad in Ohio. Let's go. That could be cool. First of all, hi to my friends in Perth. I know that many of you are here, and I miss you all, and it's tomorrow morning, and I hope you're having a great day tomorrow. Yes, so my husband works for a company that offered him a job in Perth, a temporary job in Perth. And this was, let's see, I'm bad with time, but I think we moved at the beginning of 2015. So 2014, he was offered this job, And our children were 7 and 9 at the time, and it seemed like a wonderful opportunity for all of us. I was working here. One of the hardest parts about leaving was leaving my job that I was actually fortunate enough to return to. So, and I know some of my coworkers are here, so hello guys. And so we arrived in Perth. I do want to say, I feel like I really need to acknowledge the fact that a huge reason why I was able to write this book is because I was in this very luxurious kind of expat situation where I did not need to work. And that is just a huge luxury that I feel like I really want to acknowledge, especially now that I am back in kind of my real world and working and needing to make money and like the hustle and bustle of the city. Even though we're in a pandemic, there's like a lot going on and it's harder to make time for writing. So there I had nothing but time. And there is something about the Perth landscape that I just fell madly in love with. It is, so Perth is considered the most remote city in the world. Mm. And what that means is it is not near any other city. It is the only major city in Western Australia. Western Australia is a massive state in Australia. Perth is closer to Bali than it is to Sydney or Melbourne. So a lot of Americans, when they travel to Australia, they just hang out on the East Coast. And they probably don't feel like getting on that extra flight that'll take them across the country to Perth. But it is the most undiscovered, magical place. And getting there, I mean, we just had a phenomenal time. I will say that adjusting to Australian culture is harder than you might think. I think at a glance, people might not see too many differences between the US and Australia. Oh, we're both, pretty extroverted culture. We're friendly, people are hospitable. But yeah, it was very different. And I think the experience of feeling like an outsider was certainly instrumental in my writing, for sure. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if, I'm working on another novel now, and I wonder if at some point I'll just want to take myself out of my kind of normal life in order to find that inspiration again. I don't know. I was thinking when you said, would you have written the same book in London or Ohio? I don't know. I mean, I certainly would not have written about Perth if I hadn't been there, because I didn't know the first thing about Perth. I had, when my husband was offered this job, we had to go get the almanac and look it up. And that's exactly what Edie and her husband do as well.
But it's the perfect sort of literary device. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
you got lucky on that one.
Yeah. I was supposed to go back and visit at the end of the year and I couldn't, but yeah, that's the goal this year, end of the year.
I realize that we haven't done a reading yet. I'd love you to read something.
I would love to.
Great. I want people to really see just, how smart and funny this book is. Can I just add that this book has gotten rave reviews, and it's gotten a starred review from Kirkus, which is, if you're a writer, there's sort of an ornery bunch of reviewers. Sorry if you're out there.
Unless they're here.
What?
Unless they're here.
Oh, right. You guys are nice if you're here.
Yeah, no, you
do not give stars away easily. And this is a very well-deserved star. So yeah, I'm not the only one who adores this book. Go ahead. Let's do it.
Thank you. So I will read the first few pages from chapter 1. There is a prologue, which you should not skip when you start the book. But I'm going to go right into chapter 1. And I don't think we need any context. So I'm just going to go for it. If you hear a noise behind me, it is rain. It's pouring now. So I apologize. Caroline, can you hear that?
We don't hear anything. No, we just, no, it's great.
Chapter 1. My dad was acting strange long before he was diagnosed. He would leave me phone messages. Edie, it's your father, he'd say. I can't find the top to the plastic thing. I need it for the batteries. I opened all the little walls and it's nowhere. Edie, it's the top to the plastic thing. It's for the batteries. I was living in Boston, newly married, and working in marketing for an anti-hunger nonprofit. My parents and younger sister, Abby, were back home in San Francisco. Abby discovered thousands of black plastic coffee stirrers in Dad's bedside drawer. He bought 5 pairs of the same brown loafers and lined them up next to the fireplace. He was 63. Mom took Dad to a neurologist and called me. "They never know for sure," she said, "but it looks like Alzheimer's." I was at work writing about a 4th grader in Detroit whose only reliable meal was a subsidized school lunch. I snuck into an empty conference room and closed the door as Abby continued wailing in the background like she had just run over a baby. Mom went in the other room to get away from the noise. Apparently, the doctor gave him all sorts of tests like pattern recognition and basic math. He failed every one of them. He couldn't even draw a Christmas tree, Mom said. "He's Jewish," I replied, rubbing a pencil mark off the table. I worked with Slavs. I didn't think I was old enough to have a parent with Alzheimer's, had never even considered it. The only person I knew with Alzheimer's was a former sociology professor at college. Years after he retired, he still called the department office to reserve meeting rooms. According to his former assistant, he was living in a nursing home and had bitten off most of his fingernails. Dad got on the phone and tried to be funny. "Guess what, Edie? I am crazy after all." "It's official," I told him, trying to match his tone. "You're nuts." "That I am," he said. We had nothing else to say, so I told him I loved him. After we hung up, I returned to my desk and changed the gender of the 4th grader from a girl to a boy. Later, I went swimming at the community center near my office. Underwater, I repeated the word Alzheimer's over and over. I tried it in a German accent. I tried it with a lisp. I swallowed a bunch of water. My husband, Oren, and I had plans later that night, a farewell thing for one of his colleagues, a woman with a mom name who wore cashmere cardigans and covered her mouth when she laughed. After my swim, I headed to the bar near Downtown Crossing. The room was loud and a baseball game was on. Oren was already tipsy. I tapped him on the shoulder as he was signaling for another drink and said, "My dad has Alzheimer's." "What?" he said, shrugging his shoulders apologetically and pointing to the speakers in the ceiling. "Mom called," I said loudly. "My dad has Alzheimer's." "She got a Weimaraner?" I leaned closer to him and spoke slowly into his ear. "Alzheimer's." Eyes bulging, he stared at me. I nodded. "Oh God, Edie, let's get out of here." He grabbed our coats from the bar stool, and a moment later, we were outside on Tremont Street in the cold. "Why are we here?" Oren shouted, shoving a black beanie over his head. "What is wrong with you?" He was drunk and suddenly very sad. "I just told you my dad has Alzheimer's." Oren looked up at the dark sky, down at the sidewalk, and then said quietly, "I know what you just told me, Edie. I just can't believe you told me here at a bar." He shook his head and pulled me close. We got a taxi and went home. "I wonder who drank our beer," I said, pulling my nightgown over my head. "What?" said Oren in bed, already half asleep. "Never mind," I said, flipping over my pillow to the cold side and lying down. Oren moved closer to me and draped his arm across my chest. "I love your dad," he said, and kissed my shoulder. "I'm so sorry." I wished his body could swallow mine.
Thank you so much. It's so nice. Can you talk a little bit about that? It always seems like Edie says kind of the wrong thing at the wrong time. But she's so smart, so she must know she's doing it, I think, to a degree. Can you talk a little bit about her husband, Oren?
Oren is a mensch, as my father would have said, which is Yiddish for just a really good person. Edie Yeah, they're lucky to have each other. They're an interesting match. Yeah, Edie is very idiosyncratic. She's a very unusual person who, yeah, things just sort of fly out of her mouth. She thinks out loud. And Oren loves her very much. There's a line in the book where he says that he has never known all of her, but he's accepted that. And he wants things to be okay. He probably spends a large part of his life making sure that Edie's okay. Mm. So he has a little bit of a caregiving role there that I think we all have if we're in partnerships, even with family members, certainly with children. There's like a cultivation aspect. And so as Edie is kind of breaking down, like you said earlier, throughout the course of the novel, Oren he's getting tired.
Yeah.
He's getting really tired. It's becoming a lot for him, and particularly when she's not open with him. So it does touch on that, when is it too much? Like when is love the only thing you need in a relationship? Maybe not.
Well, he tries to make her feel better by bringing a cat over from the United States that she doesn't even like. So sometimes it seems like he doesn't know her as well as he might think he does. Mm-hmm. And of course, she's harboring a secret that he does not know. But
yeah, and like if a cat would make like a cat would probably make him feel better.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And when we're trying to make someone else feel better, we often go to the things that we like.
Which actually made me wonder as I was reading your book, because I know you, and you are a savior of dogs, and you foster many dogs, which, by the way, you could tonight show a picture of whatever dog you have right now and might adopt it. They're always cute, and they're always quite imperfect, older. They're wonderful. Anyway, how come there are no dogs in here?
Well, there are mentions of dogs in here, but there's no pet dog. There's that scene that's a little bit scary with the dog hallucinations.
Oh yeah, right. Okay.
But yeah, why are there no dogs in here?
That's for next time.
Interesting. Why are there no dogs in here?
Now we know this is not a memoir. So this is
yeah, I mean, we did bring our cat into Australia, which involves an incredible amount of paperwork.
Yeah.
And logistics, and yeah, it was ridiculous. We could have brought over like a pound of Coke or something. Yeah, would have been easier.
You would have made more friends.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, one thing about this book is that there's a lot of kindness in this book, and it often comes from strangers, mm-hmm. and almost always in Perth, if I remember. Mm-hmm. But there is a character who's the caregiver, who you call the heavyset woman, mm-hmm. who is this sort of quiet sage. She doesn't have a name. I'd like to know why you didn't give her a name, for one. And then at one point, late in the book, Edie remembers that the heavyset woman told her that there are only 3 things that a family really wants to say to a loved one who is dying. Can you say what those 3 things are, and whether that's true? Is that something you made up, or can you talk about that?
Yeah, so in my acknowledgements, I thank hospice workers everywhere, because I don't know if that needs an explanation, but I feel like they are the death doulas, for lack of a better word. They are instrumental to the dying process for not just the patient, but the whole family. And I've met the most amazing people who work in hospice throughout the experience of my own father, and then with my friend Beata. The heavyset woman actually does have a name, but you may have missed it.
Ooh.
No, it's okay, because Edie refers to her as the heavyset woman. And then there's a scene where Edie and her sister are arguing, and her sister says, Regina, and Edie says, who's that? And then she realizes, oh, she never bothered to get the name of this person. She just kind of immediately labeled her in her head. That the three things, so that's something that I wanted to put in the book for sure. So when my father was dying, I spent a lot of time with a wonderful woman who worked in hospice with him and with our family. And she said that, I mean, there's a lot of waiting. It's very similar to the birth process, the death process. There's a lot of waiting around, and a lot of just keeping, you know, the person in the spotlight comfortable. So I spent a lot of time at his bedside and learned from this lovely woman that there are three things universally in her experience as a hospice worker that people say to their loved one when they're dying in those last few days. And no matter if they've had a wonderful relationship with the person or if they've been estranged and have only come back for the end. And the three things are, I love you, I forgive you, and please forgive me. And I will never forget that. That just sat with me. And, you know, the thing, my husband lost his mom a long time ago, very suddenly and tragically, whereas I had the opposite experience of losing my father when he was older and over a long period of time. So sometimes we'll talk about, it's the most morbid conversation you could probably have, but like, what's worse? And there's no silver lining of Alzheimer's. I will never say that. There is none. However, you do have an opportunity to spend a lot of time with this person. And I do feel like by the time my father died, I had said everything I ever wanted to say to him. And that I do realize is a gift of sorts, for sure.
And also you have an opportunity to be the either better person that you want to be in those intimate moments, or of course you can let yourself down. And I think that's part of Edie's struggle for this whole time is identity. And, you know, there's moments where she says that she didn't think she was this person, and not so inelegantly as I'm saying it, but you point that you put her in situations where it's clear and she kind of shocks herself.
Yeah.
I think we're going to take questions really soon. Yeah, actually. Ooh. Yes. Let's take questions. Where are they? Those questions?
I feel like, well, there's a little Q&A thing.
I know, but
see that on the bottom right?
Sorry, you bottom. Oh, okay. Here we go. Great.
It's just, you know, I just have to have a moment of thanking everyone for being here. And it's so strange that I can't see anyone's faces, but I really do feel people with me. And I'm surprised by that because I didn't know that I would feel that way. But I've received just the nicest messages. I mean, there are people on here that I grew up with and I was friends with as like a preschooler. And then there's friends of mine in Perth. And I feel like if I saw everyone's faces right now, it would be like, you know, this is your life episode or something. So just like, please know that I appreciate you all being here. And I'm wondering how much heckling I'm getting in the Q&A from
I have to keep
the jackasses.
Yeah, I know. I'm asking to throw people out. People are being thrown out right and left here. Okay. Hello, Jamie. You're celebrating here in Virginia. Here's a question for the indomitable, indispensable Ms. Handler. Do you have a passage you are particularly fond of from Edie? And secondly, is there a passage that was particularly difficult to write?
There is an interaction between Edie and her husband, Oren, that I pulled from my own life. So as Dave, my husband, would attest, I keep a notebook everywhere. I have several all around the house, but I do keep one next to the bed. And occasionally I will just sort of try and like discreetly roll over and write something down. It's never discreetly. And then he'll see things come up in my writing. And there is an interaction that was like verbatim from a conversation that Dave and I had where Edie says to Oren, "I'm sorry, I haven't been the easiest person." And he says, "I wasn't looking for the easiest." And for me, that's love right there for me. So I would say that maybe that's one of my favorite lines. And also because it just means something to me personally for my own life, I think.
Did you have to pass that one by, Dave, before you?
Dave was my first reader for all of this. So yeah, he certainly had a chance to express his dismay at anything that I was including that he would prefer that I don't. But I think he was heartwarmed by that part as well. In terms of things that were difficult to write, yes, I mean, some of the detail, I really do go into a lot of detail about the deterioration of someone. And because that's based on personal experience, there were moments that were very hard for me and moments that I would think about, of course, my own experience with my dad. But enough time had gone by. I mean, I'm sure, sadly, most of us on here have lost a loved one in their life. And, you know, for me, it's like right when it's happening, when something really dramatic is happening, I will take notes on it, but I can't write about it in the present. But enough time had gone by with my dad that I was able to sort of depersonalize a little bit. You know, it had been a few years since his passing, but I would create an environment when I had to write about that where I would try to recreate my brain like I was there. So I'd play certain music and just like adjust my my surroundings so that I could be really, really just dive into the intensity of it. And a writing teacher of mine, Susan Medallia in Perth, who I love very much, and she just came out with a novel called Everyday Madness that everyone should buy. Anyway, Susan read a very early draft, and her advice was to go deeper into the Alzheimer's, the care, like what it's like to care for someone. She felt like I was a little too tentative. And so by the time the second draft came along, it was pretty raw. So I left a lot of it in there. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Ruth Katz asks, when did you first have a picture of Edie in your head? And she means physical features, how she wears her hair, how tall she is. Or do you even?
Yeah, I have a general sense. She's not based on anyone in particular. I wanted her to just kind of float through the world without people ascribing too much to her appearance. So I do refer to a couple of physical features of hers, usually when she's looking in a mirror. But I don't have someone specific in mind. She did become such a part of me and such a special person to me that she does feel alive in some way, for sure. And I would, like, when I would go through periods of not working on the book, I would like see her sitting in the corner waiting for me. You know, it felt like she was pacing and just waiting. Like, what are you going to do with me next? What are you going to do with me next? But it wasn't like I wasn't seeing a physical person there, if that makes sense.
Let's see, Satara and somebody else has another question about what surprised you about, well, let's say, I'll say Satara asked, I'm thrilled to read this. How long did the rewrite process take once you had written the first draft?
So I wrote the first draft in, this is going to scare everyone, but if you want to write a book, just stick with it, because you can do it. You can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. I wrote the first draft in 2016. I wrote the second draft, and this is not every day all the time, right? So keep in mind, this is general, but first draft in 2015, second draft in 2016. Changed it even more in 2017. So I would say I had a final draft in 2017, And then I moved back to the States in 2018, and it took, several months to get an agent. And then after that, several months to get published or get a contract for publishing. It's a very long process.
It's long, but your process was not extraordinarily long at all.
I remember talking to you at times like, is this ever going to happen? And you would say, it's going to happen. Like, stick with it. But it feels like when you're in it, it feels kind of crazy.
Yeah, it feels crazy.
It feels like, what am I doing? Like, this is, yeah.
Well, let's see. Anna asked, what surprised you about the experience of writing a novel? And actually, I'll ask too, is like, your brother is Daniel Handler, who's a very experienced and successful novelist. And so adding to that, like, did he sort of prepare you with advice on what was going to happen and how to get through this process?
Yes. I mean, Daniel, hi, Daniel. Daniel's the best brother you could ever ask for. We've always gotten along really well, and he's been incredibly amazing about my writing, and is there when I have questions. The way that I've described it before is like having Daniel Handler as my brother is like, I'm trying to, and like me working on a novel, it's like I'm trying to open a lemonade stand and my brother is the CEO of Snapple. Like technically we're doing the same thing, but I mean, he's a lifelong writer. I do feel extremely lucky that I get to benefit from his knowledge. He certainly, I'm trying to think of like his most recent advice. He gives me advice all of the time when I ask for it. But he certainly helps with like events like this. Oh, should I have someone in conversation or just should I speak on my own? Like in your experience, what works best? I asked him when I started writing the novel, should I take more writing classes? And he said no. He was worried that if I took too many classes, that my voice and my writing would change. He believed.
Didn't he ask you first that? Didn't he say, "Are you having trouble writing?"
Oh yeah, That's right. I was looking into like different writing programs that would actually be quite time consuming while I was in Australia. But I was like, oh, maybe I should try to, not do a master's or anything, but do some sort of like certification or really commit myself to a long-term creative writing program. And Daniel said, he said, are you having problems producing work? And I said, no. And then he said, well, don't take a class then. But I mean, classes can be very helpful for giving yourself homework. Mm-hmm. Like it forces you to write. So yeah, I would say if you're having problems getting motivated in writing, classes can be great. And also entering pieces of your writing in competitions also worked really well for me. Because then I just gave myself deadlines. Yeah.
Well, we have time, I think, just for one more. So let's see. Denise asked, does writing a debut novel that's getting such great reviews, which it is, make the next novel more daunting?
No, I'm really excited about what I'm working on next. And I think if I were 20 years younger, I might feel daunted, but I have more, I mean, I'm 47 and this is my first novel coming out. And I'm proud of that. And I feel like I am much more confident than I used to be and know that I have other talents in addition to writing. If I can say that now, all of my Australian friends are thinking I'm bragging and I'm feeling self-conscious.
Oh, Australians brag. Come on.
No, you have to show humility.
Oh, really? I thought that was English.
The tall poppy syndrome.
Oh, got it.
Sorry, guys. But yeah, I do feel like, life's short. Like I'm going to write another novel. It's going to be very different from this one. And whether or not people like it is not really up to me. So no, I'm not too daunted. But you know, ask me in a couple of years when I've only written like half of it.
Go on a dog walk with her, and when she says, "I don't think I can do this," just say, "Keep going."
Yeah.
Or you'll be telling people that next.
Oh, thank
All
you.
right. Well, thank you so much. This has been so great. And thank you to everybody.
That flew by.
Yeah, I know. Flew by.
Can I say some thank yous for a minute?
Yeah, this is
Green Apple has just been like unbelievable. So thank you to the wonderful Car and the whole staff at Green Apple. You guys are amazing. And then Caroline is a phenomenal writer herself. And I know this night is not about her.
No.
But I am just going to show my favorite book of Caroline's, which is Fighting Fire. Caroline, in addition to being an amazing writer, was a San Francisco firefighter for 12 years. And this memoir is just beautiful. So that's it. I want to talk about all of your other books, but I'm not going to. And then obviously everyone at Unnamed Press has just been absolutely fabulous. I'm so lucky to be with this press. And thank you guys for being here with me.
The debut.
I feel it. I feel the love. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you both for joining us this evening. It's been a total pleasure. And Rebecca, thank you for being our neighbor. Thank you for doing the event with us. We're so proud of you.
So thank you.
Yeah, Caroline, thank you for being such a great conversation partner. And I'm just happy to be here with two wonderful San Francisco writers, and proudly so. And thank you to all of you who joined us and who purchased Rebecca's book. Thank you so much. And from all around the world, Rebecca, I'll show you later how people are tuning in from all around the world.
Yay.
But yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
I'm going to casually hold this up.
Yeah, I'm going to put it behind on my bookshelf.
I just happen to have it here.
Oh, yeah, I know. It'll go on there.
Thank
all right.
And we do have Rebecca's book available for purchase on our website at greenapplebooks.com. We also have Caroline's book for purchase at greenapplebooks.com. So until next time, thanks again to everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.